Hello, everybody, and it's a very big welcome to the first live stream of 2025. So I'm just back from my incredible Regent Navigator, no, not Navigator, Regent Grandeur Panama Canal, and then 5 wonderful days in Las Vegas, one of my favorite places to go and visit. So 2 very different experiences. So Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas and New Year. And I'll do a couple of housekeeping things and then say a couple of hellos. So just a reminder, if you are going to ask a question, please write the word question, because it makes it then easy for me to spot the questions amongst the various chits and chats. And what else can I tell you? So I'm actually here for the next month before I go traveling again. So we will have regular live streams sort of without any kind of to's and fro's and ups and downs with ship Wi-Fi and so on. So let's maybe get stuck straight into the various questions, because I'm sure there's lots of questions that people have. And there's a couple of questions about the group cruise, so I'll come to that in a second. But let me just start off with Sherry, who's actually going to be boarding the Grandeur. So the Grandeur went from Miami all the way around to Los Angeles. Then it was doing, I think, a 10-day sort of Mexican Riviera kind of cruise. And then as Sherry's doing on the 8th, so in a couple of days' time, he's basically doing exactly pretty much the same cruise back that it did, although I think, if I remember correctly, it's stopping in Panama City. So let me just show the actual itinerary, because Sherry's got a specific question around it. So this is the itinerary that we did. And I think I'm right in saying, heading on the way back, I've got a feeling it's got to stop in Panama City. So Sherry, in terms of what my favorite port was, I think probably a couple, one of which was in Punta Arenas in Costa Rica. So I did a rainforest, the aerial tramway rainforest thing, which I always enjoyed doing. It probably was not the best aerial tramway tour that I've been also one on Costa Rica and in Panama before, where you actually had a guide coming with you on the actual ride and pointing out various things. This was more kind of a do-your-own thing. So that was quite interesting. Then another fantastic place that we toured was when we went to Cartagena, and I always pronounce it incorrectly, so I hope I pronounced it correctly. I've been there once before, many years ago, and we'd actually done like a boat trip out to the islands, but this time we took the tour, which was one of the included tours, which was hop on hop off bus tour, but it included a walking tour of the old city. And I hadn't walked through the old city before, and it was really fascinating, really interesting. Those were 2 of my really favorite places to visit. So actually, when I do the group cruise, this is a very similar itinerary, and I'd been looking at the various excursions, and I got my sister, who's come in that tour, to book actually a harbor boat tour and the old city walk. So that's really good. The old city is really interesting. What was quite good is we also headed off quite early before the old city got too manic and the kind of street sellers got too pushy. And the advantage being in the group is that the street sellers were not as pushy. They would back away a lot quicker. The most disappointing port of all for me was Acapulco. I, in my mind, had always imagined Acapulco to be a very glamorous city, and it is pretty run down now. I know it had a big issue with the hurricane a couple of years ago, which damaged lots of buildings. So you can see there are many damaged buildings around which haven't been replaced. And it also had been reading now, I'm not sure that, with kind of drug cartels and money and stuff, so the city's perhaps not being as renovated as quickly as it could be. And then I always enjoy Cabo San Lucas. This time we didn't go on a tour. We actually just went and found the local beach. We'd watched a couple of videos and went to one of the local beaches, and we had a really great time. So hopefully that is helpful. Have a great time. We had a brilliant time on that trip. It was fantastic. So that was great. I just saw someone still in Vegas, big guy in Las Vegas, where there's beautiful sunny warm. So we had a great time. We had pretty good weather. I mean, having mostly been to Vegas in hot weather this is the second Christmas New Year I've spent there. It's getting a bit used to being a bit chilly, but the good thing is beautiful blue skies. So that makes a massive big difference. Let's see, Caroline is here. Hetty is here, which is great. Thanks very much. And Mooman 547 is here. So I think you're talking about getting some snow. It's actually, the UK has been hit by a huge, big, bad weather thing now. They had predicted snow last time. We got back in the sort of late yesterday afternoon. and they were predicting snow all overnight in London. We didn't have snow, but there's been lots of snow, lots of planes being diverted. Some of the airports a little bit more northern and sort of down sort of in the west of the country. But it's just cold here, so more than anything else. Oh, so Mike Carey asking the question, did you and Mark hit a big in Vegas? So no, I was what I like about going to Vegas, we are kind of MGM group sort of addicts. So we tend to gamble mostly in MGM casinos, partly because then you accrue your points and that gives you comps and stuff for future visits and so on. So what they do, which I really like, is they also give you a gains and losses statement in your MGM account. So you can see how much you have lost or not lost. And I was actually basically even, which for time in Vegas is pretty good. Then I blew back $200 or something on the last day. So I was down a little bit, but actually that unlocks when we're heading back in September, and that's unlocked comps which more than cover that kind of benefit. So anyway, Mark did less well overall, but he probably plays much more than I did. But it was really good fun. Arlen, great to see you. Just joined as senior officer. Thanks for doing that. Looking forward to meeting everybody next year on the Canal Transit cruise. So let me just explain it, because I think someone's also asked about joining the group. So for those who don't know, I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/tipsfortravelers. Maybe I'll bring that up as well. So they've just changed all the the setup here. So where I used to pull in all the bits and pieces has gone. So let me have a look. Is it here, Patreon? I've just covered that up, so it doesn't really help me. Anyway, so patreon.com/tipsfortravelers. There is also channel memberships on YouTube as well, which have fairly similar levels. It's more challenging, actually, I've discovered with channel memberships on YouTube, it's harder to communicate and stuff. So this year I'm probably going to tidy that up a bit. Anyway, so, and I do sort of dedicated live streams, and I do posts, and I do updates on trips, etc. Anyway, so there is a Panama Canal group cruise, which is happening pretty much in a year's time on Holland America Zaandam. And that is for patrons and members. The reason I haven't expanded it beyond patrons and members is basically it kind of sold out. So I cap my group cruises between 70 and 80 people, which I've discovered is a perfect number that I can mix well with people and so on. So we have a few cabins left over, not left over, because we added a couple more cabins. So someone asked the question, Baylor Girl Sick in Bears. So if you want to join the group, the only way you can join the group is by booking specifically the group via the various so being a physically channel member or patron, booking it via, once you join, you get the links to join that. So that's the only way you can really join, because the way that it's really structured is some of the perks and benefits are linked to the people in the group. So a lot of people ask me when they're on the same cruise, can you join the group? And unfortunately, the answer is no, because it's not really fair on the people who've booked. And some of the perks we get, like use of the room, the cocktail party, is a perk that gets come from doing the group thing. But of course, if you're on a cruise, it's always great to meet people. So, like I was on the Grandeur, met loads of people who follow the channel. So I'm always great and happy to do that. So do definitely give me a shout. Barry asking the question, why is it with cruise ships selling full, they're reducing services? So, I mean, I think we're probably seeing a little bit of stabilization of that happening now, as they've kind of, but at the end of the day, they're still trying to, I guess, catch up from the huge amount of profit and loss and whatever that they had during the whole pandemic. It's interesting, though, if you look at what the cruise lines are saying, is they are basically pushing margins up fairly significantly for themselves. So that's really what they're doing, is they're just trying to increase returns, I guess. So you'll see that they're talking about how fares are increased. They expect them to keep increasing. They've sold a huge percentage of next year, or this year, I keep saying next year, this year already. The video I've got this week, by the way, is around how to get around some of the fare increase things. So if you haven't watched that video, maybe at the end of the look on the channel, it should show up there. And I look at things that I've used where I've managed to always kind of sort of get around or outsmart, if that's the right way, the fare increases. The cruise lines are saying they're going to definitely see fares increasing, and people are spending more on board because they're increasing prices more on board. So I do think though we've seen, Barry, I think we've seen a little bit of stabilization of that. And I think in some cases we're seeing some lines which have overcorrected, particularly in the ultra luxury side, like Seabourn. We're seeing them sort of put more stuff back in, but they are definitely kind of trying to drive up margins without a shadow of a doubt. So let's see, Claudia's here, which is great. Christine is here. Sarah's here, travel agent Sarah's here, which is great as well. Let's have a look. Oh, here we go. Fraser at Sea's here. So good to see Fraser here. Fraser, of course, has a channel, Fraser at Sea. What would your advice be a good luxury line for someone to try who's currently experienced mostly in the mass market lines? So Fraser, I think probably one of the good kind of leaps is to go with a line, look at this, the sort of, so you've obviously got the mass market lines, then you've got, so you obviously, as you know, MSC, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, then you've got those premium lines, Holland America, which I know you've been in Holland America, Cunard, Princess, Celebrity, etc. Then you get sort of small ship luxury. So you've got Azamara, Windstar, Vikings in there, Oceania. That's where I would focus, because the next step up is ultra luxury. So actually going to those small ship luxury lines is a good leap, partly because the price leap isn't quite as enormous, particularly if people are used to traveling in balconies or suites. It's not as big a leap up. Also because there's fewer, the fares are not quite as heavy because they don't have as many inclusions. So you'll find fewer inclusions as you would in the ultra luxury side. And they do have more choice. So it's quite a good kind of interim. So I would really focus on your Oceanias, Azamara, Windstar, Viking as well. It falls within that group as well. But I would focus really on Oceania, Azamara, Windstar would be the ones that I would focus on because they are, I think, a good transition. Of course, understand that you're not going to get the scale of entertainment, but they are probably the most interesting ones. And also what they're really interesting is because they tend to have very interesting itineraries because they are smaller ships. Obviously Oceania has slightly bigger ships, the 1,200, 1,250, and then they have the R-Class sort of 700, but they all have kind of very interesting itineraries. So I find we use them a lot. We booked a couple. Like, for example, next Christmas, we're doing a really interesting itinerary from Sydney to Papeete because it goes to lots of different interesting islands. So that's what I would focus on. Even if you look at Windstar, some of the places when I went to Norway, they go to slightly smaller, out of the way places. So that's why it's a good option. Expat Dream asking the question: what was Mark's final opinion of Regent? He really liked Regent a lot, so he was very keen on Regent. He liked the small ship. He, as you know, as we've spoken before, enjoys kind of an active casino. The casino wasn't particularly, it's a fairly big casino for the size of the ship. It wasn't particularly active, partly because of the way that the evening gets run, because the shows are at 9:30. So the dinner sort of opens at 6:30, but so you've sort of got, between people kind of having their dinner at different times, and you've got the show at 9:30, then after 9:30, people, it was quieter and stuff, people getting ready for the next day. So the casino never really got into its sort of vibe for him. So he was, but actually because we were going to Vegas, he was less bothered about that. Really enjoyed the food, found the food very good. Still felt that, the main dining room, kind of misses some of the class, if you like, and ceremony that you would get on Queen's Grill on Cunard, with your own waiter, your own table. Well, we did end up actually having our own table. So I would say every time we ate in Compass Rose, which is the main dining room, probably 90% of the time we had the same table and the same waiters who got to know us. And you can actually, if you really want your own table, you can probably make it happen. But obviously you have to then get into the rhythm of what time you go. But so he really liked it, which is good news because we have a month-long cruise booked later in the year down the coast of Africa on even a smaller ship, the Navigator. So he really enjoyed it. Definitely would go back. Actually enjoyed Compass Rose more than found the speciality less keen. He found Sette Mare, which is the veranda, which is the buffet restaurant at breakfast and lunch. It becomes Sette Mare, the Italian. So he quite liked that. Was less keen on, thought Prime 7, the steakhouse, was pretty good. Wasn't that keen on the French restaurant. I'm not that keen on the French restaurant because I'm not that big on French food. And actually found the Asian fusion restaurant more disappointing. I think he probably made some bad choices because I'd really hyped it up a lot. So maybe that was also, but really, really liked it. I think one of the things that, and he agrees with me on this, one of the things I think the Regent doesn't do well, that is disappointing, is their enrichment side is pretty weak. So there were some great speakers on, but we wanted to hear about the region. We passed you through a interesting part of the world. The Panama Canal lecture was very weak. It wasn't by an expert in the Panama Canal. Someone who was there to talk about some other things, was obviously asked to do the Panama Canal talk. The other speakers were very interesting, but what they didn't do is really deep dive enrichment. And when I've been with them to Japan and stuff, they didn't do the same either. I think it's a really kind of really weak thing. Fraser, hopefully you heard me talk about Punta Arenas, Cabo San Lucas. So there. So Chris asking the question. Chris, doing the Amasane with St. Malo and Mount St. Michel, anything in the St. Malma area I should see. Just left Viking, Panama Canal, the shipping crew, wonderful. Tours, not so much. So yeah, so Viking is interesting because Viking, the region tours, what you have in region, you have a wider choice of tours. But when I compare the tours that they had included and not included that you paid for, compared to what I'm seeing Holland America offer for my group cruise during the summer itinerary, you realize the tours overall are kind of weak. And I think Viking, in my experience, they are so-so, particularly the included one tends to be not great. I feel that both of those lines with included excursions, or the Silver Sea do include excursions, they're probably a little bit better. They almost need to, they're at a point where they either need to invest way more in excursions or kind of break away and kind of expand and let people just book their own, offer a wider choice. Anyway, I don't know anything about the St. Malma area, Chris, so I can answer the second part of your question of the first part. So if anybody knows anything about that area, has anything to recommend to Chris, please leave the comments there. That would be great. Heather, it's good to see you. Heather here. We're just back from Munich where there was no snow, just like at home in Wisconsin, second year in a row. Anyone know where there actually is snow in December/Christmas, even with climate change? The Swiss Alps is the best place to go in reality, Heather. And even somewhere, I guess, in parts of Italy, in that sort of up that part of the world, is where you would you would normally get snow. So in the UK, whenever you watch a Christmas film about the UK, London will always have snow. It doesn't snow in London at Christmas. It just doesn't happen. If it snows, you'll maybe get some in February. As I mentioned, even it was supposed to snow the last couple of days with this big thing coming in. But you need to almost kind of head Swiss, Austrian kind of mountainous area is the safest place to go. But it does tend to be, I guess, the skiing season really starts sort of more now, I guess, as we head that way. But I hope you had a good time in Munich anyway. BWG014, we're new to cruising and traveled in Azamara out of Southampton. We really enjoyed the atmosphere and all-inclusive nature of Azamara. Do you recommend any other similar cruise lines? So hopefully the bit I answered when I was answering Fraser, hopefully also answers that a little bit. But I would definitely look at the Oceania, and their actual part of their fleet is exactly the same ships as Azamara. So the R-class ships, I think Azamara has 4 of them, and Oceania has 4 of them: Insignia, Serena, Nautila, and I can't remember the other one. So they have exactly the same ship. But I would look at Oceania, I would look at Windstar as 2 really good options. They're very similar in nature. Those would definitely be the one to take a look at. Love Travel. How do you pack for a transatlantic heading east from Fort Lauderdale to Barcelona? I'm a terrible person at packing. I take this pretty much the same thing always. So it depends a little bit whether you're heading. I guess you're going kind of either April, or I guess you're going. So if you're heading east, you're going to be going at the beginning of the season. So you're heading when all the ships are heading back up to the Mediterranean. So you're probably going around April time, I'm guessing. So in reality, once you get to Barcelona, April times, you're probably going to get sort of low 20 degrees Celsius in the day, kind of thing. So it's not massively cold. So I would literally take, because you're heading from relatively nice weather, I would just take a couple of layers, kind of sweaters and that kind of stuff. Maybe like a sort of a puffy jacket, like a small puffy jacket. It won't be terribly cold. So you don't have to worry about wrapping up too crazy warm with hats and gloves stuff, unless you're like me and get really cold, in which I like to have them as kind of sort of insurance. Warren asking who the cruise director will be on Grandeur. We had John. I can't remember if he was on, how long he's going to be on for. I feel like he was going to be on. Someone asked me, Dadabetic, I forget which cruise line was matching on land casino status. I'm trying to remember offhand. So certainly Norwegian did have a relationship and Royal Caribbean had a relationship, but those changed recently. So I would just take a look at those because I know both of them changed slightly. So I have a video, or if you go to my, if you go to the channel, Tips for Travelers, and just search casino, I've got a video there where I do talk about some of the price matching, but it's Norwegian and cruise line and Royal Caribbean were the ones that had some arrangements, certainly with the Caesars group. So that would be my tip there. Might just write the word question so I don't miss any questions. And then miss one. Darren, have you heard any complaints about Viking ocean cruises? I took a Viking cruise after Thanksgiving and it was a disaster. Everyone on board was disappointed. So I haven't heard any ongoing things, Darren. I mean, I keep an eye sort of on things, online, groups and Cruise Critic. You have to be a little bit careful with Cruise Critic because I found increasingly people tend to go in, they want to vent about it and stuff. But I haven't heard any sort of ongoing things with Viking. It's, Viking loyalists are extremely defensive of Viking. So if you ever go to any of the Facebook groups, they get very upset when people give negatives. So I'm sorry that you had a disaster. I haven't heard any ongoing things, but it will be interesting to watch how Viking evolves now that they've gone public, and obviously they're starting to expand the fleet with the new bigger ships and stuff. So I haven't heard anything, but I will keep an eye out for that. I guess we just heard there from Chris saying that it was great, but not so much the tours. So we will see. Chris, thanks for the comment. That's and towards small ships, the internet itineraries. So that's great. Barbara has a question. We're trying to decide between Azamara 18-day Norway trip or a 15-day Viking Iceland Norway trip. Your view. Any other suggestions for a scenic wildlife intensive cruise? Big thanks. So the one thing I would watch out with the Viking Iceland Norway trip, I haven't done the Viking Iceland Norway trip. I did a Windstar Norway Iceland trip. One thing you need to look at is the balance in those 15 days of how many ports you're going to be in and how many sea days there are. So, that will be my first watch out because there's quite a few sea days in between doing all that stuff. So I did the Windstar one, but I was mostly because I wanted to go and revisit Windstar. I was less bothered at that point about the ports, but we just did a scattering of ports. So we didn't see much of Iceland and we didn't see much of Norway. So that would be my first watch out unless you're planning pre and post days. I think without knowing the itinerary, but I would do that deep dive in Norway because I'm guessing if it's an 18-day, you're going to get the chance to go right up far north, depending on the time of the year. That may or may not give you a chance to see kind of northern lights. But if you get right up to places like Tromsø, you're going to see a very diverse thing. My gut reaction would lean towards the 18 down. Now, Azamara is in many ways, although I was talking earlier about the same category, it is a slightly different experience. Obviously, it's a way smaller ship. Bear in mind, if you have anything other than a suite, you have tiny little bathrooms. So for 18 days, you might find the tiny little bathrooms a little bit tiresome. I've only done a week-long cruise on that. Have I done longer than that size? Maybe a 10-day, one of which I did solo. So the small bathroom didn't get me down. So that's also in a balance. So just take a look at the cabins because they are very, very small bathrooms indeed. But I would lean towards that deep dive into Norway, just because when I did that Iceland-Norway trip, I did feel like I hadn't seen the best of either. And I wasn't able to stay in Iceland afterwards to do more kind of a deep dive into Iceland. If I did, probably I might have enjoyed it even more. So Diana Andrew here calling all ports. Been very interesting following. They've been on Europa, and I'm very looking forward to my trip in April on Europa. Let's have a look. John, we're considering another European cruise. We typically cruise on Viking. We're now looking at Amma or Talc. Your opinion? So John, I did a video recently where I looked at how the different cruise lines, river cruise lines, are being ranked at the moment. based on reviews. Now, you have to be careful because, of course, they are reviews and people have biases and so on. But certainly, one of the things, Viking consistently does extremely well, although actually Avalon is getting even higher scores. Now, Avalon aren't quite the same category as Viking. So certainly, I'm a big fan of AMA. I've always had really good experiences on AMA. So I would say take a look at AMA very much as a good alternative. Now, I've never been on Tauck. I have toured their ships, but certainly people who like Tauck absolutely love Tauck. Now, in the ratings of Tauck currently, they're not getting particularly high scores, but when I look at it, it's because Tauck seem to have gone through a phase of doing quite a lot of charters, and the charters seem to be pulling the scores down, which of course is not a true Tauck experience. So certainly lovers of Tauck really like Tauck for a couple of reasons. They feel they do a really good job, particularly with enrichment, because obviously that's sort of their background, is kind of escorted touring, and they're feeling that they have incredibly good tours because of that strong relationship in the places. But certainly I would say either Amaway or Tauck. I personally lean a little bit towards AMA. I feel AMA is probably a little bit closer in what I've seen and experienced between Viking and AMA. They, to me, feel closer. Tauck is a slightly, from what and again, I haven't been on it, it's a slightly different experience. But those three, I think whichever of those two you go with, I think you'll find them a great alternative to Viking. AMA, the reason I like AMA is they lean a little bit more towards wellness. So they have bikes on board, which, if I remember correctly, Viking don't. They do have sort of like some fitness classes, which Viking don't have. So they are a little bit more kind of wellness focused. The excursions also, they included more bike tours, hikes and stuff like that. So if you're looking for something a little bit more active, Tauck obviously focused a bit more on the kind of the cultural side. Life's Adventures. Hi there. Apart from your latest Antarctica cruise booking, have you found in previous bookings zero solar supplement? So of course, this is always the ongoing problem with getting solar supplements, not getting solar supplements. So I have done a couple. I've found that unfortunately, in reality, it's easier these days to get a zero supplement with some of the more expensive lines. So I did the Kimberley. One of the reasons I was able to do the Kimberley was simply because they were doing very low solar supplements. So those who don't know what Life's Adventures is talking about is I'd said in my last Antarctica trip, which is my third Antarctica trip, that I would never be able to go because just too much money and too costly. Then, thanks to Mark McDaniels, who I was on the trip with, one of my patrons who have come to know really well, we were talking about how we'd love to go to the southern part of Antarctica, but all the things we'd seen were just crazy expensive. He then spotted that Ponant, who had been to Antarctica before, they were running a trip out of New Zealand every year, one trip a year, which goes right down to the south to the Ross Ice Shelf. And he'd been tracking that, and it came when it was launched. They launched with a 30% discount and zero single supplement. Sarah jumped on that, even though she jumped on within hours of it coming out. Even by the time we got all the quotes back, even the confirming the zero supplement, they were kind of backtracking, because when they launch with very few zero supplements, then it basically ramps up to 50%, then 100%. So it's all about speed and stuff. But the key thing I've found in Life's Adventures is the only time I found zero supplements is when they do promotions. So I sign up, and I mentioned, in fact, in this video that I referred to earlier that came out this week around how I kind of managed to work around these increases and stuff, is I sign up to all the lines that I'm interested in. I sign up to the email newsletters because that's when they do solar supplements. So I have found a couple, but it does tend to be, unfortunately, on those more costly lines. So occasionally you might find a Windstar does one, or Azamara does one, but it's very, you need to be really ready to go and book. So the best way to do is sign up for those newsletters. The second thing to do, by the way, is on Vacations to Go, is they have a single where they list cruises which have low or no supplements. And again, so those are when they're being promoted. That's another good way of keeping track. Now, you don't book through Vacations to Go. I don't book through Vacations to Go. I book through my travel agent, Sarah. But if I spot those, I will get, I'll say to Sarah, can you check if that's still a valid promotion and stuff, and hunt those down. But it is without a shadow of a doubt, incredibly difficult and becoming more challenging because cruise lines are sailing, for basically full at the moment. So that's a challenge. So hopefully that answers your your question. So I'm going to have a slug of water here. So Claudia's asking a question. Charge event another rose on Virgin Voyages Resilient worth it. I missed on Med in 2023. Will be on Resilient again in February 25 in Caribbean with my daughter. I'm not quite sure I understand your question. Is charge another event another rose? I'm not 100% understood your question, but I would definitely. I mean, it's interesting. I'm talking about getting Mark to try it. Virgin Voyages. So later next year now, because this year's full, is Mark's going to be in California for a period of time, and this brilliant lady is sailing out of Los Angeles. So we're looking at some of those itineraries. But I think it's definitely worth it. But Claudia, I'm not quite sure I've understood your question. So I suspect there's something there I've missed on another rose. So if you help clarify, I will definitely answer that better than I have there. Larry, do you plan to try the new Disney ships, including Treasure Adventure or the late 20? Larry, I currently don't have any plans to try the Disney ships. I have been following particularly Treasure, and I sort of feel I should get back on Try Disney. But at the moment, my 25 itinerary is kind of completely chock-a-full. So it's unlikely to be this year, but I would like to try it. And particularly what I would probably do is try and link it to one of the times that I'm in the Caribbean, when I'm heading to like Miami, and try and that's why I find it's a good chance to try different lines. Also because out of Miami or Port Canaveral or of course Fort Lauderdale, Port Everglades, is often a lot of these lines will do short, like Disney do quite a few of the short ones. It gets you a chance to get immersed. So it's on my list, but I don't have anything specifically planned. But I am really intrigued to take a look at that. Katie, how do I know when a line is having a repositioning / launch for best pricing? Loved your YouTube on how to search for best prices, pay less than others. So thanks for watching that video. Again, Katie, the best thing to do is sign up for emails, newsletters. I still find that one of the most effective ways. And also on social media, and I think I mentioned that in that video, I found that a lot of flash sales will show up in social media. So the key thing is, if you're on Instagram and Facebook are the two key ones that lines use. So if you're on Instagram or on Facebook, first of all, follow or like or whatever the individual cruise lines, but also make sure that you're interacting with cruise content, because obviously the advertising algorithms will then show ads for cruise lines if they can see that because that's how they will buy the advertising. So for example, my Instagram feed and my Facebook feed is just chock-a-block. I mean, if I open my Instagram, it'll just be chock-a-block full of, let's scroll through it because I don't behave now. I mean, literally there's just Holland America, Euro, MSC. There's just like cruise line after cruise line after cruise line offering the ad. So that's the best way of doing it. They tend, I've never really specifically seen ads for repositioning cruises, because they tend to just bundle those as part of the overall thing, the overall promotions. But generally speaking, the plus sign is repositioning cruises tend to be cheaper anyway. So for example, in 25, a lot of the cruises that I'm doing are effectively repositioning cruises. So the one I'm doing in February is because I want to try Crystal, and obviously Crystal are very expensive. But what I'm doing, they reposition the ship out of Japan. They're going via Manila eventually. I think they're going down to Australia. So I got onto that. Partly also then takes me to Shanghai. I wanted to try the new Silver Sea Nova ships, and I'm doing there when they reposition the ship from Alaska to Japan, and it was like half the price per day. So even when it's not on promotion, you'll find the price better. But that's the best way. That's the best way of doing it. Yeah, I just saw your comment there. That I am very intrigued. I would love to try, and I need to try and think about it. Some of these lines that are emerging in Asia, there's a couple of lines I would really like to try that. Particularly, obviously, I need to make sure that they're catering for English speaking guests, but it would be great. Heather, so Heather, I know, is a big Disney fan. So on Disney Destiny, does a Treasure, but Adventure is pretty unlikely it's out of Singapore. Right, so Adventure is the one out of Singapore, so that's good to know. So Heather has on her channel covers quite a lot of Disney, but also does land travel, but does quite a lot of Disney. In fact, before I did my only Disney trip, I used a lot of Heather's videos as well. So that was pretty good. Zombie Tog, the best mainstream line for a Pacific retirement bucket list cruise. Okay, so I would say I would take a look. There's some very interesting itineraries that Holland America and Princess do, sort of Pacific related. They have some really great itineraries. So I've been looking at a couple of itineraries. The other one, if you have a bigger budget, is Viking also have some really interesting Pacific itineraries. These days, most of the cruise lines do head down there, but some of them that seem to really kind of focus on it big time, those are the ones that I really think are just fantastic. So that's where I would start. Also, as a retirement, those probably are the right sort of demographic, and style of cruising, I would think. So take a look at Holland America. Now, Holland America, depending on you're retiring, when I did look, they've only got up to 26, I think, at the moment out, because I was looking at some stuff later in 26, which they didn't have out. They might have it out by now. I think Princess is a little bit further out, and Viking as well, I think, has gone a little bit further into 27, I think. Because I was also looking at some, I want to do some cruises around there, sort of maybe into 26, into 27. But those are the ones that I would definitely look at. So, and again, someone says congratulations on retirement, likewise. Jeffrey asking a question, how many group cruises do you organize per year, any on Viking? So Jeffrey, I don't organize very many. I've only had 2, I only have 1 currently planned. So I don't do them very often. So I don't actually have any happening in 25. I had 2 last year. And the next one that's planned is in, as I said, in January in Holland America. I've tended to focus on the sort of the more premium category. So I've done Holland America, I've done on Celebrity. I also probably consider Princess. Partly the reason I do that is because those ships offer everything from inside cabins through to suites. So I found that caters for all kind of budget types. So it kind of means that the thing with Viking is obviously it's a fabulous line, but it's quite expensive. So, and that will probably exclude quite a few people, particularly because there's no chance, even as a solo, it's very expensive because they do no solo deals. So even, we're doing Holland America, we couldn't get solo deals, but with the group rate, it made it a little bit more affordable for solos to come. In fact, we have 20 solos on that currently. So I do them relatively infrequently. And at the moment, I only have 1 other planned, and I need to decide if I will do another in 26. So it's maybe only one a year. So not very often. So that's Katie probably answers the question. Hopefully you heard my answer a little bit earlier. So we only have the 1, and it's open for channel members and patrons at the moment, just because we sold all the cabins we were holding, and we have, I think, a few cabins left. I haven't checked them with Sarah since I went away. All the insides are gone. I think all the ocean views are gone, and I think there's a couple of balconies left. So we've kind of capped that. So hopefully that answers that. The Christian Dior Museum on the French coast. So I guess that's answering the question answered earlier. That sounds fascinating, Christian Dior Museum. I'd like that. Great, so Dan and Andrew here. Now that you've done the Panama Canal with a few different lines, what line/ship do you think provides the best overall experience for a full transit? Great question. And I'm going to update my Panama Canal video, partly having had more experience, got good footage. So I think one of the challenges is when I've done it on Merino, so it was on Oceania, and doing it on Regent, it's quite difficult to view the forward movement of going through the canal, because on those ships, they didn't open the bow of the ship, and the only other way you can look forward is through glass. So on the Grandeur, for example, the only way you could look forward as you move through the canal was from the observation lounge, so through glass, so not great. I got great shots by going to the back, which very few people did. So I watched us kind of going backwards, if you like, through the canal. So the ships that I find the best in terms of viewing, and I did mention in an old video, you want to try and find one which allows, either has lots of open space in the front with its open decks in the front, or is able to open the bow of the ship. So you generally find that Vista class ships, so for example, when we went through on Cunard, Queen Victoria, so Queen Elizabeth did the same, or when I've been on Holland America Zeta Dam, which is what we did in the group cruise on, but all those Vista class ships, because they are able to open the bow of the ship and still be able to, they obviously have to have the mules attached to various parts of the ship, but that doesn't interfere with the opening of the bow. And that's really important, because you can then go to the bow of the ship, you can see yourself heading through the canal, particularly as you're going up, you're then looking up at these the vast gates. You can see the mules right there, which are keeping the ship in the center. And this is, I'm talking about particularly going through the old canal. The other thing that I found both Cunard and Holland America did is really good enrichment around the canal. Regent had, you might have heard it because you joined a little bit late there, but Regent they had a guy doing a Panama Canal it wasn't his expertise. So he did a fine enough talk, but it was not the greatest talk. It was a little bit Google and whatever kind of stuff. So it wasn't a real deep dive. So lines like that are good on enrichment. So Cunard, Holland America, Viking, for example, they have really good enrichment. So I think you need that to really understand it. Now, all lines, when you go through the old canal, and I'm guessing it's the same on the new canal, will have someone from the Panama Canal Authority. I guess it's part of the $100,000, $200,000, whatever they spend to go through, comes on board as commentary. So that's pretty standard. But I would say you need a ship where you can go and look at the front. Now, when I went through Marina, luckily I went through it just post-pandemic times, so the ship was only half full, and the hotel director saw me madly putting my camera up trying to video, and he said, look, we've got an empty cabin which has a balcony in the front. If you don't say anything, I'll let you go out there and video it. So seeing you going to the front is just magical, and you want to be outside. So I would say, again, we're talking about Panamax style, so there's smaller ships that can go through the old canal if you possibly can, and one that lets you get out front and does good good enrichment is really important. And there is the book, which you just read the book, which I've forgotten the name of the book. It's from Something Between the Ocean. I'll leave my recommendations. It's a fabulous book that tells the story, but you need to understand the story and the history and how many people died trying to do it, and the different attempts and the politics in the US. What they did to basically create the government that would allow them to do it, how they had the Panama Canal zone, how Jimmy Carter then negotiated to give it up, hand it back to the Panama control, and so on. Bob has a point, a question/point. When criticizing Regent, I agree with most points. Don't you agree overall? Those criticisms aren't enough for people to avoid Regent. Oh, 100%. I think Regent is fantastic. I really like Regent. And it's one of those things that's sort of, for me, the key thing, which I think is so easy to fix, because they have, for example, they have 3 enrichment speakers on board, but there's kind of a disconnect between, I guess, the destination and the excursions and the enrichment. You kind of want to get them in a room and just get, because they clearly can attract high quality speakers, but just get it, for me, the big thing would be improving enrichment. And secondly, I think, focusing on excursions, trying to ramp this up. And I know they're probably constrained a bit with budget, but kind of fix that. But absolutely, Regent is a great experience. I mean, it's costly, but it's just, the service is great. The ships are beautiful. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Pete NE, Happy New Year. Thank you very much to you too. I'm going on a Panama Canal cruise this year, stopping in Colombia and then Costa Rica. Is yellow fever vaccination certificate required for Costa Rica? No, is the short answer to that. Obviously, it could change, so you need to just check. If it changes, it's some sites will recommend it, but no, it's not required at all. Some people like to have it, but do obviously check before you go, because things change all the time. I found, I'm not sure where you're based. I'm guessing that looks like you're on the set of Coronation Street. So I'm guessing you're in the UK. If that is the set of Coronation Street, we're actually going later this month actually to tour it again. We went and toured the old set just before they demolished it. Then we went a couple of years ago, sort of around, I think, when you couldn't travel internationally, pandemic was lifting, and some friends of ours who now have moved over from Australia. Big fans of Coronation Street. We're going there. Anyway, sidetracked. So I'm guessing you're in the UK. So I always use the Foreign Office site. So if you put FCO and Costa Rica into Google, it will bring up and it'll tell you if it's current, if it has changed. So Bruce Cruises, thank you very much. Bruce, just looking here, has left let me see if I can bring it up here because it disappears so quickly. Here we go. Bruce Cruises, thank you very much. Bruce is one of my channel members or patrons. Thanks very much for that. And thanks for all the wishes to the community. That's very kind of you. Let's have a look. Let me just jump back. Sorry, I'm jumping down there. I've then gone on. I don't want to make sure that I haven't left anything out. The travel, and they're saying, yeah, we kept running to shore excursions from Viking River cruises at a site in Munich. Yeah, I mean, Viking have a monstrous fleet, and you're right. I've been in Passau and other places where there's been 3 or 4 Viking ships, and you feel like that Viking signs everywhere. So Chris also recommend the AMA there, which is great. SL. My husband and I only cruise on America. They seem to always have 2 cabin stewards. Yes. Do we tip them individually or together? I tip separately, but it really adds up, especially. Yes. We have the same dilemma. I tend to tip both of them. We had the same thing. Like even on Regent, we had fantastic cabin stewards. Now, tips are included, and we did tip them separately because they just did a fabulous job. But you're right, it really adds up. So it's a bit like, you know, as you say, within your budget, like balancing, we always have this dilemma around how far do we push it, because you're right, it does add up. But I tend to tip them individually, or I guess you could tip it for one and say, here's for, you know, you and Simon or whatever, or here's for both of you is a way around that. I haven't tried that actually. I should think about it, because I'm assuming, and I don't know this, I'm always assuming like they maybe pool tips anyway. I'm guessing, I don't know. Heather asking, how's the jet lag? I'm very fortunate, Touchwood. I generally don't get jet lag. And I don't know whether that's because when I did my corporate job for like 20-something years, I was doing long haul travel 2 times, often maybe 3 times a month, you know, and I would have to be on my game because I'd be flying, going to meetings, flying somewhere else, long haul, going to meetings. So I don't know whether I trained myself. I mean, definitely as I got older, I find I get more tired, but generally speaking, I'm pretty good on the jet lag front. I'm very good at sleeping on aeroplanes, which drives like Mark crazy because I will sleep for hours and hours and hours on planes. So that helps a lot. So I get onto the time zone where I'm going and I'll sleep. So for example, when I went to Japan last, and I'm going to have to do it again in February, you know, we board at 9 o'clock in the morning UK time, but it's a 14-hour flight. It gets to Tokyo at 7 a.m. the next morning. So in reality, what I do is at midday UK times, because that's then like 8 o'clock Japan time, I will go to sleep even though it's lunchtime, and I will sleep for 6 or 7 hours. So I think that's how I manage the jet lag. Now, saying that, I'm probably tempting fate next time around. So far, pretty good. Fingers crossed. Dean, been on 2 Viking cruises lately. Each time they offer to buy $100 increment certificates with $200 in ship credit on future non-book cruises. Is it a good deal? Dean, it's only a good deal. My approach, I tend to try and avoid booking when I'm on a ship. I get carried away. Like I was on Regent, I was like, oh, I want to buy the certificates. I want to book another cruise. But I try and resist that unless I specifically know that I want to go on a specific itinerary, and I definitely want to go on that line, because you're right, it's only a good deal if you're actually committed and planning to go on a Viking cruise, in which case it's a great deal. But I've found a lot of people because you do get carried away, and they're great at onboard sales. I found some people kind of get carried away, they kind of book it, and then it's like, oh, okay, but I could have done that itinerary on, you know, Oceania, and it would cost me less, and I'm going to be in a better cabin. But now I'm sort of linked into Viking because of these little certificates. So it's only a good deal, you know. So I give an example in the video this week where I knew I wanted to do the repositioning cruise on Silver Sea, and I knew that booking on board you get incentives, but it gets credited to your travel agent. So that's sort of what I would do. Oh, well, Sarah's been on talk and gives a very strong recommendation there. Thanks for that, Sarah. It's one of the best rivers, so that's great to know. Jay, your favorite reposition cruise from the UK area to the US in fall? Great show. Thanks for your dedication. So there are actually very few repositioning cruises from the UK in reality. So you're kind of limited because most of the cruise lines will reposition from the Mediterranean. So from Barcelona is a popular one. Sometimes they'll go from as far as Rome. So you're actually going to get much wider choice of repositioning cruises as they head back from the Mediterranean down to the Miami area, which is where most of them will head to. So in the UK, your options are more limited. So you're going to have so some of the UK lines like P&O will move quite a few of their fleet to the Caribbean because they then base their ships, a lot of their ships in the Caribbean, and they normally base them, I think, out of certainly they used to be out of Barbados because they can do charter flights in. So that's one option, but that wouldn't be my favorite. I'm a big fan of P&O, but you'll find that both Princess and Celebrity base ships in the UK, and they obviously have to reposition them at the end. So those would be the ones. So I would probably focus on those. So for example, Celebrity have Apex, which is a beautiful ship. That'd be quite a good one to do reposition on because there's lots going on. It's a big ship. It's a beautiful ship. There's quite a lot of choice. And then Princess, I can't remember which Princess ships they have. I think two ships based there. But those are the ones I would focus on because they're also going to go into Fort Lauderdale or Miami or Port Canaveral, depending on where they're kind of based out of. I guess Celebrity is mostly, I think both of them are mostly out of Port Everglades. But those are the ones I would focus on rather than the P&O ones, because also you're going to get into Miami. Hopefully, I'm guessing you're from the UK, but I might be wrong in that. But those were a focus. But you're going to have way more choice. If you look at like from Barcelona or Lisbon, then you're going to have a huge choice of cruise lines. So if you really want to have very busy, active sea days with lots going on, you've got all your Norwegian ships, your Caribbean ships with all their entertainment and stuff. If that's what you want. If you're more relaxing, then you're talking more the Celebrities and so on. Just trying to write the word question so I don't miss your question. I'm trying to see if, let's have a look. Is this a question? Good afternoon. With travel insurance claims being denied more times than being approved, is getting travel insurance worth it? And what do you think of GeoBlue? So I'm not familiar with GeoBlue, to be honest. And I don't know the stats on travel insurance claims being denied, to be honest, but so I'm assuming that's true. I think getting travel insurance is absolutely 100% worth it. And whenever I cover travel insurance in any of my videos, people contact me with like horror stories or massive saving stories, and I often see reports of people who having to do GoFundMe pages because they've got an injured relative stuck in the Caribbean or somewhere, and they didn't have travel insurance, but they're facing a bill of between $20,000 and $150,000 to be medevaced out. So it's absolutely worth it. I mean, you're right. There is maybe some on the smaller scale. I mean, obviously it's not small scale if you've had a medical issue, but a couple of $100 here and there because they won't cover some issues or whatever is frustrating. But if push comes to shove, you absolutely want travel insurance, because literally, if you have an injury or you have to get offloaded because you've got a medical issue, an appendix or something like that, or you break your arm and you're offloaded somewhere, you could be facing astronomical amounts of money, and that's when it pays off. So I would absolutely, I would never travel without travel insurance, even though it does cost me a lot because I have pre-existing conditions with being in remission from cancer, etc. But definitely, I have heard people say, "Oh, we took our travel insurance, but we didn't use it, so we wasted our money." I would, it's that occasional time when it could really make a difference. Now, I think the point is, for me, it's the medical one. Sort of, I don't know GeoBlue, but for me, what I worry most about is the medical side. But my insurance policy, right, does cover lost baggage, missed ports, those kind of things, which in reality I could probably cover myself. I'd be annoyed and frustrated. but the medical is the one. Don't travel without medical insurance would be my personal, my absolute personal tip. Lots of people talking about talc, how pleased they are with talc, which is fantastic. Oh, here we go. Thanks, Claudia. Another Rose is a $50 charge for dinner show. It's only on Resilient Ladies, so I wonder if I should jump at this time. I haven't heard of the show, so I haven't seen any reviews or anyone who's been on it. So give it a go and let us know if it's worth it. I would love to hear about it. I hadn't heard. I know they're doing some reconfiguring. I guess they've got they're doing some refits. We don't know exactly what on Brilliant Lady what they're doing. So I would give it a go and let us know if you think it's worth it, because the food and stuff is really great. So if you do give it, definitely drop me a line. Hopefully, Sherry, you heard about Mark's views on that earlier. Caroline asking the question, which itinerary you're doing on Explorer latest year? I'm doing, so I'm doing in April. I think it's April the 3rd, something like that. It's a 10-night Barcelona to Barcelona. It covers a few little ports in North Africa, goes down to Canary Islands and back. So it's quite a few sea days within it, but I was largely doing because I wanted to obviously get good time to see the ship, try everything, try the different dining venues and do it. So it's not an itinerary I would normally choose, although it's got some quite interesting ports I haven't been to for a very long time. So that's the itinerary I'm doing. By the way, if you ever want to know what cruises I'm doing, on my website, tipsfortravelers.com, there's a thing called Future Cruises, and I keep an update there of all the cruises that I've got that I've got kind of lined up. So that if you want to check in and stuff. So some people contact me and say, "Oh, I see you're on the same cruise as you," and stuff like that. Vincent, we're starting to look at a Nile River cruise. Which lines would you recommend? So I did AMA Waterways. Now, one of the things that's really important on many of the Nile River cruises, even though it's names a lot of them are complete charters. So the ship and the crew and everything is kind of chartered out to local providers, and that may be a rule. So AMA Waterways was great. What I also discovered is when people talk about new ships, they're not always new. They may be refurbished ships. So I really thought they were fantastic. I made a terrible choice in cabin. My big learning on Nile River cruises: do not be at the back of the ship, because most nights you're docked, side by side, ship back to back to back. And if you're at the back, it's incredibly noisy from the engines of other ships, which are really loud diesel engines. So make sure whatever you do, get in the middle of the ship, whatever you're doing. Personally, I would take a really hard look at Viking. If I was to do the Nile again, I would absolutely look at Viking. They do have new ships. They have 2 ships, which look absolutely incredible and amazing. So I would definitely look at those. Now, other people have done Uniworld. So Richard and Helen with Visit Us, they did Uniworld, very blingy themed ships. They certainly had a great time as well. So you could look at their videos as well and take a look at those. So those would be the ones that I would sort of focus on. Path Between the Seas, thank you very much. That's the Panama Canal thing, Path Between the Seas. I knew it was between something. So thanks very much. Thanks very much for adding that. Let's have a look. We're rapidly out of time. Tom asking the question. I've been here. Thank you very much. What is your bucket list for classic train trips? I have a lot there. I would love to do the Orient Express, but I look at it, it's absolutely crazy. I would also like to do the one in Scotland. Is it the Scotland? Oh, it's called now, the one in Scotland. I also would like to redo the GAN, and I would like to redo Rovos Rail in South Africa. Also, recently I was watching, but I don't think I would ever be able to afford to do it, both Trek Trendy and another channel I've started following, whose name I forget at the moment, did that incredibly expensive train in Japan, but it was crazy expensive, and you have to enter a lottery. But those are kind of the ones that I currently have as my sort of list. Lots of people talking about not being able to sleep. Shame, I have not done a cruise from Boston to Bermuda. So if anyone has any suggestions, but you're right, many cruise lines are sailing out of Boston. these days and doing the Bermuda ones. And I've got but I don't know any I can't remember offhand. I did look at it a while ago. I feel like Norwegian might have been doing some, but I can't remember. So obviously like a Norwegian or Caribbean, if they do that, would be a great fit for a family of 4 because they have family cabins. Pricing is great. And of course they do have phenomenal entertainment stuff for families of 4. Sarah also reminded, by the way, that travel insurance covers cancellation, which is important. And it is really important. One of the things I need to look at when I'm renewing I was looking recently at my cancellation. My cancellation amount is not enough, basically. So I need to look at that when I renew in May. Let's have a look. Someone's done their Orient Express. I keep watching videos of Orient Express. I would love to do it. I would absolutely love to do it. Here, and Claudia making the point again. Pass Between the Seas, David McCullough. Thanks very much for adding in the name of the author. It is a great book, and I will actually recommend that to all people coming on the group cruise. So we have churned through time. I really appreciate you joining me for this first live of 2025. I'll be back next Sunday. Same time, same place. If you haven't watched that video for this week, take a look at the video. I really appreciate that. If not, have a great week, and I will see you next Sunday. Take care.